The evening air inside the house felt heavy, pressing down on every corner of the room. A bitter argument had erupted between the wife and her husband just an hour earlier, and though the shouting had ended, the silence that followed was far more unbearable. It clung to the walls like smoke, thick and suffocating. At dinner, plates clinked and spoons scraped against bowls, but not a single word passed between them. The children, sensing the tension, ate quietly. When the meal was done, the husband lay down beside the children, wrapping an arm around them as they drifted into the safety of sleep. Soon his own breathing slowed, soft and steady. To anyone looking in, it was the picture of peace, but in the wife's heart, a storm still raged. She sat alone in the dim kitchen, staring at the half-cleared table. Her hands trembled as she pressed them together in her lap. "How long can I live like this?" she thought. Anger and sadness swirled until tears brimmed in her eyes. A weight settled on her chest, suffocating, restless. Finally, unable to bear it, she rose from her chair. Quietly, carefully, she opened the door and stepped into the night. The air outside was cool and sharp, brushing her face as though trying to soothe her. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and began walking aimlessly down the narrow lanes of her neighborhood, her footsteps echoing faintly in the stillness. It was then, as the world seemed cloaked in silence, that a soft murmur reached her ears. She stopped, straining to listen. From a dimly lit house nearby, she heard a woman's voice whispering in prayer. Prompt, "Oh God, please, just one piece of bread for my child tonight." The words pierced her heart like a blade. She hesitated, her breath catching in her throat, but forced herself to move on. A few houses down, another voice rose into the night, this time trembling with urgency. A woman pleaded with heaven to protect her son from hardship and misfortune, her words spilling out like a mother's last hope. The wife's steps slowed, her tears blurring the dark street, as she realized how deep the sorrows behind these closed doors truly ran. The lane stretched ahead, shadowed and quiet, yet each step seemed to open another hidden chapter of suffering. The wife walked slowly now, as if the darkness itself were urging her to listen. From a small, crumbling house, she caught the low murmur of a man's voice. His tone was weary, desperate, almost broken. "Tomorrow," he whispered to his wife, "begged the landlord for a few more days. Fold your hands if you must. Just make him stop threatening us." The wife froze in the middle of the street, her heart tightening. She could picture them, two figures hunched in dim light, weighed down by a fear greater than pride. For a moment she thought of her own husband, asleep inside with their children, unaware of her absence. Their argument had felt like the world shattering, but compared to this family's terror of losing their roof, her quarrel now seemed painfully small. Her feet carried her on, though her spirit wavered. From another window came a fragile, trembling voice, the quiver of an old woman's words. "It has been so many days since you brought my medicine," the grandmother reminded gently, her breath shallow, her tone laced with resignation. A young boy's reply followed, heavy with guilt. "Grandma's shopkeeper won't give it on credit anymore, and I don't have enough money to buy it." The sound of the boy's shame pressed against the wife's chest, and her tears, once born of anger toward her husband, now flowed freely for strangers she had never met. She pressed her hand against her heart, willing it to calm, yet the ache only grew deeper. By now, the night seemed filled not with silence, but with cries, each one seeping through walls and windows, reaching her in waves. The cool breeze she had sought for comfort only carried heavier burdens, and just when she thought she could endure no more, she reached a humble hut at the edge of the lane. From within, she heard the soft, steady voice of a mother consoling her children. "Go to sleep, my loves," the woman whispered, her tone as tender as it was heartbreaking. "Your father will surely bring food tonight. When he comes, I promise I'll wake you up." The children whimpered faintly, but soon surrendered to exhaustion, their small bodies curling up in hunger's cruel embrace. The wife's breath hitched, her legs faltered, and she stood still, unable to walk further. At that moment, the anger she had carried with her dissolved into silence. Each voice she had heard had etched itself into her heart, painting a picture of suffering far greater than her own. She realized that behind every closed door lay a story of struggle, unseen but no less real. She thought of her children, sleeping soundly, their stomachs full, their father beside them. Her tears now blurred, not from bitterness, but from shame and humility. Slowly, she turned back, the shadows of the lane trailing her, like memories she could never forget. The wife's footsteps echoed softly as she retraced her way back through the narrow lanes. Each house she passed seemed to whisper its secret grief into the night, and though the voices had faded, they lingered inside her heart. She pulled her shawl tighter, the cool breeze brushing against her tear-streaked face, no longer soothing but awakening. When she reached her own door, she hesitated, her hand trembling on the latch. For a moment she stood there, thinking of the prayers she had overheard, pleas for food, protection, mercy, medicine, and she thought of her own earlier words, sharp with anger, as though her life had been unbearable. The contrast cut deep. She whispered a quiet breath into the darkness before stepping inside. The house was still. A faint glow from the oil lamp illuminated the room, casting soft shadows on the walls. She looked toward the bed and saw her children, sleeping peacefully, their small chests rising and falling with steady rhythm. By their side lay her husband, his arms stretched protectively across them, as though guarding them, even in dreams. He stirred slightly in his sleep, reaching out unconsciously as if searching for her. That simple, unintentional gesture pierced her heart with tenderness. The anger she had carried earlier now felt fragile, almost absurd, in the presence of such love. She realized that though their lives were not without quarrels or disappointments, she and her husband had built something precious, a home where their children slept with full stomachs, where sickness was met with medicine, where tomorrow was not feared as a threat, but faced with shared strength. She moved quietly to the bed and lay down beside him. Her tears came again, but this time they carried a different weight. They were not of bitterness, but of gratitude. With her hand resting gently on his, she whispered into the stillness, "Thank you, God, for what I already have." The room seemed to exhale, its silence no longer heavy but peaceful. She closed her eyes, listening to the soft breathing around her, her heart steadying at last. In that moment, she understood a truth the night had revealed. Behind every smile lies a hidden struggle. Every family bears silent burdens, and no life is free of hardship. Arguments, disappointments, and pain are part of love, not its opposite. Gratitude does not erase those struggles, but it gives them meaning, softening anger into patience and transforming despair into strength. And as she drifted toward sleep, her heart carried not the bitterness of the evening's quarrel, but the quiet wisdom of knowing that blessings often hide in the ordinary moments we take for granted.